So let's keep going, and we are now talking about mittens. I'm not a big mitten knitter. I did go through a phase when I completed like 2 or 3 pairs kind of in a row when I was discovering color work for the first time. It's all I wanted to do, knit color work. I completed the 3 or 4 pairs of mittens as part of that phase, but then kind of moved on to other things. My friend Vanessa, who you will hear about a lot in these podcasts, because as you can tell, she's a big influence on my knitting life. So she is knitting a lot of color work, socks and mittens, beautiful, beautiful things. So I kind of couldn't resist the appeal of, you know, this type of project after I've seen some of her recently completed work. I decided that it's a high time that I produce a pair of color work mittens. The yarn I used was this, and I didn't keep the label. I don't know, I'm usually better at these things, but this time I didn't. So it's from Blue Sky Fibers wool stock, and it's this beautiful woolen spun kind of worsted or maybe DK type of weight. It's just very, very soft and really beautiful. So I used 2 colors. Here they are. One is called Gold Meadow, and I guess this is the one, and the other one is Gray Harbor. And this is the composition of this yarn is 100% wool, so it's not superwash. This is what I decided to do. The pattern is called Sunflower Mittens by Mary Jane Mucklestone, and it's part of the Main Knits book. And when I saw it in the book, they just look so fabulous, and I decided I had to make them. Picked up the yarn, and the rest is history. I made these on US size 3 needles, which is 3.25 millimeters. Pattern is written for a bigger needle size, but this was the size they gave me, the gauge specified by the designer. Let me show you what the finished object looks like. Here is the mitten, here's the back of it, and here's the inside. I did have to make some changes to the pattern for multiple reasons, so let me start with the beginning. When I picked up the yarn, I picked up 2 50-gram skeins. The yardage, I realized on the skeins was less than what the pattern called for, so I'm like, oh my god, I'm not sure I have enough, let me wing it. So what I did, I started with the provisional cast on there. So I said, let me finish both mittens there, then see how much I have left, and then divide it evenly and go as far as I can with the leftovers for the cuff. Also in the original pattern, the cuff is done in just one color, one main color, but I decided to use both of the colors and do a 2-color rib here rather than just the light color, this one. And I also finished the cuff with the I-cord bind because I thought it gave it a nice extra little something in terms of the finished look. I also, as I was knitting on the pattern, I found that for some reason it wasn't long enough for me. So the original pattern ends somewhere here. So as you can see, it would have been too short for my hand, even though I don't think my hands are particularly large, but maybe I was mistaken. So anyway, I had to add improvise a little bit to make it longer, but I think it worked out at the end. So the knitting on this didn't go quite as smoothly. I was hoping for, like, you know, a quick return to color work with these, because the yarn is quite heavy, should fly off the needles, be done in no time, but you know, like these bumps are along the way. And I also found, like, I remember now why I didn't do more color work mittens, because I find it's always awkward around this area. I do them on like magic loop, and always when you have to kind of go like this transitional area, I always end up with this crinkle. It's a bit awkward for me, always, like I find it annoying. and I'm like, maybe colorwork mittens are not my thing, but I still finished these ones, and I really like the look of them. Another problem that I had, like something that never happened to me before. I'm usually a very kind of even knitter. I don't experience problems with like gauge changing depending on my mood, time of the day, or various other factors. For some reason, this time, the second mitten that I made ended up being bigger than the first one, even though it's like exactly the same stitch count and everything. I don't know what happened. This one I knit mostly at the cottage, and this one, maybe because there was a break between the two, like it was like 2 or 3 weeks before between when I put this one down and started this one, and different environment. But again, I was never before affected by these things. I found it quite annoying, and it was quite shocking to me actually when I finished this one and I put them next to each other, like, oh my god, what happened? I tried to compensate for it, like when I don't have mitten blockers, but when I washed them, I tried to stretch this one out, and I kind of shaped this one to look smaller. So I think it kind of worked. There's like, it's not too bad, right? Yeah, no, I think it's totally fine. Yeah, and I love the color combo, so I'm pretty sure I'll be wearing them a lot. By the time I was done with them, I'm like, maybe I wouldn't be doing colorwork mittens for a while now. But then I bought this book. Here's the book that I recently acquired. It's called Alternates, and it has all these interesting colorwork designs that a knitter can incorporate into various garments that they want to make. So the book is by Andrea Rangel, and I just found some of these designs even on the cover to be so interesting and unusual, like really modern take on colorwork. So like, for example, these little hands here, and these leaves. And but what really got me, there's this pattern here that's quite cheeky, of a sweater with like a skull and bones kind of pattern going. So I saw that pattern popping up on Ravelry, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting book, I may use it. Why am I bringing this now when I'm talking about mittens? The reason is that there is a mitten pattern in here. It's this one. It's called Deep Ocean. I was looking at it as I was overthinking the crisis like the reason why I dislike this awkward edge transition. What I noticed about this one, and I don't know what's a revelation to me, maybe is a well-known fact, and this is maybe how some people, like most people, mitten knitters, deal with it, is that there's this line here, you see right where the edge is, there's this line when they're just knit every probably last stitch, like transition, where you do that kind of thing here. So there's this line of color. So basically you knit the same stitch in a contrasting color all the way along, and it kind of saves you the trouble how you, if you have to carry a float here, how it's being done. So I said, I'm not sure if I'm explaining it right, but I thought, oh, maybe if you just have a line here, maybe it helps you manage that awkward situation. Maybe I should just try and knit these mittens just to see how it works. This was about 15 minutes after I decided not to do colorwork mittens for a while, so you see where like a bit of flip-flopping going on. I saw this one and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll be making another colorwork mittens like soon, because I think this is written for finger and weight yarn, and I do have quite a bit of finger and weight bits and pieces which actually could use a home, and I think would work well for this project. And I also watched the latest episode of Skate Hero podcast this morning. Ellie announced a mitten club. I'm like, I can't resist that. Who is better to help me get over my fear of colorwork mittens than the colorwork mitten queen, which I think Ellie really is. So I signed up for that. So there will be a pair of Selbo mittens coming up in my knitting carts pretty soon, and I already know which yarn I want to use for it. I was determined to do stash diving as opposed to buying new yarn, but really wanted to buy more of this. I think I really like how this feels on the hands. But I had something else in mind that I think will also work really well for color mitten, and it's Brooklyn Tweed Shelter. And these are the two colors that I plan to use for Selbu mittens, which I'm planning to cast on this weekend. So you see, big plans. We'll let you know how it goes next time we talk. This yarn I bought at the Knitter's Frolic this year, and I bought 4 different colors of Shelter. The other 2 are these. I have great passion about Brooklyn Tweed, their patterns, their aesthetic, the whole. I really love what they're doing for knitting, and I've been using Brooklyn Tweed patterns for like quite a while, like made quite a few projects out of it, especially when it comes to cabling. And maybe they are so big on cabling because cable shows so well in their yarn. I've been a bit apprehensive about using the thinner version of this, the Loft, just because of how fragile it is. And I know that I heard some people saying it's getting stronger, but I really want to try Shelter for longest time. And when I saw it at the Knitter's Frolic, like how could you resist? How could anyone resist these colors? Like, seriously. I picked these up, 2 skeins of, actually I picked 1 skein of each, and I wanted to make hats. And then I came home and started looking for patterns right away, and I realized most of the patterns that I like require more than 1 skein. So I frantically texted my friend Vanessa, who frequents the shop that was vending this yarn at Knitter's Frolic, asked her to pick up 1 more skein of each for me, and she kindly did. So yeah, you see why she's one of my favorite people in the world. Yeah, I bought this Shelter to make hats, and I did. As much as I love this yarn, I have mixed feelings about it in the hat context, because especially for a slouchy hat, I find it didn't work that well, just because it doesn't really how to say, it doesn't really slouch. So let me show you what I mean. This hat, it's a Brooklyn Tweed pattern as well. I'm not sure what it's called, but if I put it like, I'd like it to do this, but it's a bit stiff. But I'm hoping it's gonna soften. But and I already like soak it in conditioner and stuff. But anyway, still love this yarn to death. I was wondering what to do with these leftovers. This one I may not have. So this is a full skein, but I'm still working on a hat in this, which is like jump into another department, hats. So this is what's on my needles in the hats department. It's an antler hat pattern from Tin Can Knits, making it for my beautiful dear husband. I should be nearly done, so there will be enough left of this. Hoping to combine it with this, and hoping these 2 will be enough for a pair of mittens. So this is my game plan for the mittens: Selbu mittens and Brooklyn Tweed Shelter. These 2 colors, I can't remember the exact name. I believe one of them is Fossil, one of them is something else, but I can look it up. I will add the detail to the bottom. So we finished talking about mittens. Next, let's talk about hats. I already started covering it to some extent, so let's finish. In terms of finished objects for hats, as I mentioned, I had recently made 3 hats out of Brooklyn Tweed Shelter. These are here. So the first one is, the pattern is called Skiff, and all of them are Brooklyn Tweed patterns. So Skiff, I quite like it. I love the color. I haven't decided if I'm gonna keep it for myself or give it to someone as a gift. Again, it's one of those cases, it doesn't usually happen to me, but I just felt like they need hats out of this, and that's what I did. Now I try to decide what to do with them. But they're all beautiful. We'll make it sure if don't end up using it myself, I'll find them with a good home. The second one is this beautiful like oatmeal kind of color. It's a pattern by Michelle Wong. It's called Thicket Hat. It turned a bit bigger than I expected, so it's like extremely slouchy, but I kind of like it. It was quite a complicated cabling design to make, so it wasn't like mindless knit, so I've really gotten quite attached to it, so I'll probably keep it for myself. And the third one is called, the pattern's called Breakup. So here it is, this gorgeous green color with speckles of yellow and blue and dark gray. Again, as I mentioned, the problem I have with Shelter is that it doesn't really slouch. So I really quite like this pattern, and I may make it again in another yarn, but unless this a bit stiff. I like it nevertheless. So I already have a male friend in mind who I may give this to as a gift, and I think he'll really like it. So but there it is. One thing I want to say about this braid cap pattern, I found that it's one of the easiest cable patterns that I've made, and nevertheless it looks really impressive. If you're looking for a pattern to make a quick cabled knit hat that would look complicated at the same time, this is the one for you. All are great and beautiful, and I have leftovers that I'm planning to put to good use with mitten knitting. As far as needle size goes, for all of these hats I used size 4, US size 4, which is 3.5 millimeters for the ribbing, and US size 7, which is this 5.0 millimeters for the body of the hat. As far as future plans go for hats, I must say I don't have a specific pattern in mind yet, but I have a yarn. A bit of a backstory. Nothing to do with hats, but to do with why I have this yarn now and why I'm going to knit a hat with it. Not so long ago, I purchased this magazine, which if you haven't seen it, and I mean, if you're a knitter and you haven't seen it or heard of it, you must have been living under the rock, because this has been the most talked about magazine recently. It's Pom Pom. They came up with their 5th anniversary edition. I've been looking at Pom Pom for a long time, but this was like, okay, fine, I give in, I cannot resist this anymore, so I subscribed, and this is the first issue I received. The one pattern that sold this to me is this gorgeous cabled cardigan on the cover. This is one of those things that I want to make, but may take a while for me to dive into, because as you can see from the size of it and the pattern, it's quite a commitment. Any such project of such scale, you need to be very careful with your yarn selection, because it can make it or break it. You don't want to invest that much time and resources into the project that you may not be satisfied with the end result. So this pattern is written for La Bien-Aimée DK, and where I live it's rather thin on the ground, and I'm not even sure how I would go about acquiring this kind of amount of La Bien-Aimée and DK weight, how much it would cost. So I started thinking about possible substitutes. I don't necessarily want to make it in a superwash, just because superwash tend to stretch, I found, like a lot, and something like this cabling, you know, it can make a garment rather heavy, and I'm just not confident I can trust the superwash yarn to hold its own when it comes to that kind of a garment. So start thinking about possible substitute that's not superwash. This yarn is something that is one of the possibilities. This is Cumbria by the Fiber Company. I heard a lot of good things about it. Before I could commit to working with it on a large scale project, I decided to try it on something that's smaller, such as a hat. So this is 100 grams skein, 216 meters, and it's 90% wool and 10% mohair. I love the feeling of it. It's rustic yet soft at the same time. So I actually bought 2 skeins of it, and I plan to make a hat and a pair of mittens from my beautiful mother, who's been asking me for a beige hat for the longest time. So she's gonna be getting it for this winter with mittens. This is my future plan as far as the hats go. I have no pattern yet in mind. My mother likes berets, or like a sloucher kind of hats. I was thinking making another one of these for her. I'm hoping that, because Cumbria looks a bit thinner than Shelter, but I'm a bit concerned about the size, as this may be a bit big. So I don't know, haven't decided yet. I guess when I do, I will let you know. But this is my future plan for hat and mittens. We are done with garments, shawls, mittens and hats. Let's talk about socks. So generally speaking, I'm not a big sock knitter. I do enjoy making socks. I find that in relation to their size, they take me a surprisingly long amount of time. So, but I still think it's a lovely project to make. Very useful. My daughter loves wearing socks. I do wear them quite a bit. It makes it such a beautiful gift for someone that you really care. I do knit most of my socks, like all of them, almost on magic loop, 2 at a time, just because I am afflicted by the second sock syndrome. So when I'm done with them, I'm done. The latest pair that I made, pattern for these is coming from from the book. This is by Carol Feller, Short Row Knits, and here they are. So I made these out of Lichens and Lace yarn. The color is called Faded Rose. And as you can see, it's a lovely, lovely variegated yarn with beautiful shades of faded pink, yellow, beige, and it's like really, really nice. The only complaint I have about the yarn is that the two socks, they're different. And I took the skein, I divided it in two, and I started knitting toe up, and at some point this one started looking much pinkier than this one. I kind of like them both separately. I love how vibrant this is, and I love how muted, vintagey this one looks like, but together they are not exactly twins. But you know what? I decided it doesn't really bother me. They're still beautiful, and I'm still gonna wear them and enjoy them. I really, really wanted to have sock blockers to show them properly to you today, and I did call a couple of yarn stores nearby, and both were sold out. So I don't think showing them like this does them justice, but I haven't washed them or blocked them yet, but they do fit really, really well, and I'm really pleased with the results. Something I want to say about the pattern, there's a reason why I chose this specific pattern. The reason being is that, as I mentioned, my preferred method of construction for socks is toe up, and my preferred heel construction is short row heel. I find that fits me better and than the traditional flap and gusset. It creates just enough room. I don't have a very high instep, so I don't need a lot. And I found that when I made socks, used to make socks with the heel and flap and gusset, it was like too much room here almost, that I don't know, just didn't look right. So this is Fish Lips Kiss short row heel, which is my preferred method for construction. It's so easy, it's almost mindless. I don't need to look at that. The only thing I heard people say in another podcast that a heel with the gusset, they found that it's better, and I was wondering, is there a pattern that is short row but still gusset? And there is. And in her book, Carol provides recipes or pattern. It has two patterns for socks, bottom down and toe up. Both short row heel, they have gussets. I tried it and I didn't follow the pattern exactly because I didn't think I needed as much of a extra like gusset as there was specified in the pattern, but I did a tiny one, and here it is. If you have been looking for a sock pattern that explains how to do gusset for short row heels, this is the answer. And I can show you what I'm working on now in the sock department, and it's probably the most talked about pattern these days is the Mercury sock. It's a free pattern Ravelry that's being knit by a lot of people these days. Why should I be any different? Decided to knit it with these two yarns. Unfortunately, I lost the label, and I cannot tell you the brand, or I'm guessing it's a sock yarn, probably 80-20 merino nylon mix, and this is a variegated kind of speckly, and this one is like semi-solid. Both are beautiful colors, and let me show it to you in a cake. Maybe it will show the colors better on this one. Lovely, lovely color. I hope I have enough. So I bought two skeins and I divided them into two parts, and this is where I am now. This is my first time I'm making socks with contrasting cuffs, heels, and toes. I'm hoping it will be fairly straightforward, right? There's not much else that I want to tell about these, other than I'm knitting these on US 2.0 millimeter size. And actually I did the cuff on 225, but then when I started the lacy part with 225 size needle, it looked a bit loose to me, kind of. So I ripped it back. I didn't get too far, maybe like one repeat of the lace. So I ripped it back, switched to a smaller needle size, US 2.0, so here we are. and these are higher sharps. So many other podcasters rave about these, so I decided to try. So far, fairly pleased with them. My other needle of choice for sock knitting is Adi. I quite enjoy them. I do like the sharper tip on these, so I have another favorite now, which is great. So we'll keep on working on these. We'll let you know how these go next time we talk. And as far as future plans for socks, I do have another pattern that I wanted to make for quite a while, and it's a free pattern on, I think it's a free, I need to check. Hermione's Everyday Socks. This is the yarn I want to use. It's it's not my typical color of choice, so these may go to my daughter, but I really like the color. Just blue is not really my thing, but it's really beautiful. This one is from Baron Wool, and this is a label. This is the logo. 80% virgin wool, merino extra fine, 20% nylon polyamide, which I'm guessing is nylon, and the color is called Summer Nights. So this was their surprise sock club thing when they send you one skein of you don't know what color. And I try to participate in these things because I love surprises, and you can't really go wrong with this, right? So we are done with socks, and now there's one other project I want to cover. The last one, I promise. It feels like I've been talking forever. The last project I want to cover today is a blanket. So there's a bit of a backstory. I find it's quite funny how sometimes for some things you go like, there's no way I'm gonna ever make this. Why would I do that? To, you know, starting actually making it and then finding it to be ridiculously addictive. So this was my relationship with this blanket, which is the Coziest Memories blanket. I looked at so this is how easily influenced I am by other people. If you asked me like a few months ago, would you knit the blanket? I would say absolutely not. My knitting time is way too precious, and I have way too many other things I would rather knit than a blanket, which is something in my mind so utilitarian, something you can easily buy somewhere, and not kind of worthy of spending a precious knitting time. And here I am knitting on a blanket and can't put it down. So here how it looks like. You can see some of the yarns. This is from the Fade Sweater. This is also from the Fade Sweater. This is from a pair of socks I made recently. This is Madeline Tosh. So here I am, knitting on the blanket. Frankly, I can't put this down. This thing is ridiculously addictive. I think everybody knows this pattern now. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. Actually, I think, ironically, this may be one of the most used objects that they've ever knit, because if you think about it, this will be on the sofa or a couch. I'll be looking at it every day. I'll be using it every day as I knit on other things, because my favorite place for knitting is sitting on my recliner in front of a television, and it will just be so awesome to actually use this. And while I'll knit, I'll be like, oh, this was a sweater, and this was a pair of socks, this was another pair of socks, that was a shawl. So if you haven't started this yet, consider yourself warned. This is ridiculously addictive. Seriously, you wouldn't be able to put this down. Every night as I knit on my Exploration Station shawl or a pair of socks, I always feel the need to put that thing down and pop at least one square on the blanket. And it's been growing quite quickly. One other thing that I find extremely satisfying about it, other than this quick sense of accomplishment, I did a square, and it feels like you've accomplished something. It's like a unit, and you have something to show for your knitting time. The other thing I find extremely satisfying is the fact that I get to use the precious scraps and leftovers that I really didn't know what to do with before this came along into my life. I hate waste in general in life, whether it's wasting time or wasting resources. And especially this is very acute when it comes to yarn, because I do, like, and you can probably relate, we do spend a lot of time thinking about what to buy. We do form relationship with the fiber while we work on some stuff, and when you finish an object, which is beautiful, but you have this precious leftover of something that you've invested time into thinking about, invested money into buying, and then kind of bonded with, and you have this leftover that you don't really know what to do. I always felt bad throwing things out, and I never really did so. What I usually do when I finish an object, if I have a leftover, then I would think of something smaller I could knit, or maybe color work, and I don't really consider being done with the object until I use up the leftover. But there's always something that's you kind of can't really do much with. Now I know what to do with this, and this has actually been motivating me to knit more socks, because now I think, oh, I need to make more socks so that I have more leftovers to pop into the blanket. I used to dread leftovers, now I love them. So when I started knitting on this, I went on a scavenger hunt and went stash diving to search for any scraps I may have to put into this, and I actually didn't have that many, and I was kind of disappointed, like, oh my god. To the point that I wanted to go out and buy some minis, but I'm like, wait a minute. You started this blanket to deal with overages of yarn, not to buy more. So I kind of stopped myself, and now I keep adding new squares every day. I do use some tricks to keep me going. So one thing about mending in ends, weaving in ends, it's my least favorite part of knitting in general. So I try to weave them in as I go. So this is the inside of the blanket. So every square I add, I weave in the other two ends around it right away. So this is, and also I tend not to put it down without starting a new square, so that next time I feel like picking it up, I'm ready to go, and I don't need to think what color to add. So here's like I'm adding another square. The other thing is I'm doing the modified version of the pattern. Like I'm doing it the way Katie from Inside Number 23 is did her blanket. So with this ridge in the middle. So thank you Katie for the tip. I really like quite how it looks. It gives it kind of somewhat like more of a like structured look, I think. So quite like it. I'm building it not in a row by row kind of fashion. Rather I'm going from the corner and building it kind of like that, if you know what I mean. So not sure yet how big it's gonna get. Haven't settled on the final size, just because of how I'm constructing it. I want to see how wide I want it to be, and then we'll start just going down. But really quiet, enjoying it. It does slow me down in terms of working on the other things that are on my needles. So when I was determined to finish the vignette shawl on that weekend, I did not bring this with me to the cottage on purpose, because I knew if I was to have this blanket with me, there's no way that the shawl would have been finished, because I would be way distracted and then tempted to work on this instead, or take breaks from the shawl to work on this. So it stayed at home, but now it's getting the attention it deserves. Yeah, so I will keep updating you on the progress as I go. I did not really count how many squares I had on it today. I will be more scientific about my status updates next time, so you will get the exact idea how I'm progressing. It's not as fast as I thought. It takes me about like 45 minutes to make one square, I would say. So it's not like flying off the needles exactly, but it's very satisfying at the same time, so I don't mind spending time on this. As Katie says, you have to knit what makes you happy. This makes me really happy. But I want to mention also in terms of how much yarn you need for a square, because sometimes like you see I started the square and then I was running out, or was running out, had to complement. Like here I may have been like way too optimistic with regards to how this blonde, this purple would take me, and here I had to supplement this turquoise with the yellow. So as a rule of thumb, so I ended up weighing this when I had about 22 squares on it, and it was at 121 grams or so. My conclusion is that on average each square takes about 6 grams at my gauge. I showed this to my friend Vanessa, who I'm going to meet tomorrow, and she already told me, because she's much more prolific sock knitter, so I assume she has a lot of scraps, so she told me I would be getting some more to work with, and I couldn't believe I would feel so excited about scraps, but yeah, here I am. This was the last object I wanted to cover today. I'm brand new to this podcasting thing, so I'm not even sure how long I was talking for and how long this episode is going to end up being, and whether or not I'll have to break it up into parts. But it feels like I've been talking forever, but there's also editing to do, so we'll see what actually ends up being finished product. But as I promised at the end, I wanted to leave some time to talk about myself, why I started this podcast, and what I want to get out of it. As you may have gleaned from the content so far, knitting is a big part of my life. There is nothing else I would rather be doing with my free time. My second favorite thing to do, second favorite to knitting, is to watch knitting podcasts, to talk about knitting with other people, to take knitting classes, participate in knitting events. Yeah, I'm rather monogamous when it comes to hobbies, and I think that this is my passion at this point in my life. I learned to knit quite young. I was taught by my grandmother, so very informal kind of, and then I was picking up through as I was going throughout my lifetime. But only recently, the last few years, I picked it up in full force and never looked back. So I met some of the most loveliest friends through knitting. As I mentioned, my friend Vanessa, my friend Natalia, lovely people, and I'm learning so much. And then I was introduced to Ravelry, and it's a whole different new world. So very passionate about knitting, and at the same time, one thing I found was lacking in my life lately is audience of like-minded individuals that I could talk to about knitting, because as much as I love my knitting friends, we don't get to see each other as often as I would like, and that kind of leaves a gap if you don't have somebody as passionate as you are about something that you can share with on a daily basis, or readily accessible. So nobody in my family really knits, and they are not really that interested in talking about knitting. Not that I let it stop me. So yeah, and I was thinking, you know what? I am really enjoying watching knitting podcasts. So Skandir, Katie from number 23, and it's really weird how you feel that you get to know someone really closely, and you feel this connection with the person even though you've never met them before. So I really enjoy watching their podcasts, as well as some of the others podcasters, and I will be mentioning them in the subsequent episodes. So. And then I thought the world clearly needs another one, and here I am. So I didn't really do it right away, as it took me a while to actually even sit down and record this episode, for a couple of reasons. One being, I guess it will take me a while to get over how I look and sound on camera. We always have this idea about ourselves, how we perceive ourselves, which is not necessarily consistent with how others see us or how we may look on camera. So once I get over that, and may actually post this episode on YouTube, the other things that were stopping me, first of all, I have no illusion about the fact that podcasting is a lot of work, between recording and editing and actually posting. And if I start getting messages in the future from viewers, I like to be accessible and interactive, and that may also take time. So I don't know. I'm just decided to do this, but I'm fully aware of the fact that this will eat into my very precious knitting time, what little I have. So that could be a major hindrance to the frequency with which I am able to post new episodes. So anyway, going into this not really knowing what to expect, we'll see how this goes. But the big push that actually prompted me to do this today is that my lovely husband, for my birthday this year, he got me this camera that I'm recording on now, and the tripod, because he's like, yeah, you've been talking about it, here you go. So I guess the pressure is on now, no excuse. So here I am. With all this said in mind, my goal is to last for at least 10 episodes. So this is kind of the scope, if you will, that I'm laying for myself. To record and post 10 episodes. This is my goal. With regards to the frequency, I'm thinking bi-weekly, just because weekly could be a bit ambitious but I guess I have to wait and see how long it takes to process kind of post-production side of things, which I'm planning to outsource at least partially to my daughter as a payment for all the beautiful stuff that I'm knitting for her. So here it is. Anyway, I'm off now to edit this episode, and I hope to post it in the near future, and I hope to hear back from you on how much you enjoyed it or not. I guess, yeah, don't tell me if you didn't. I don't really want to hear that. Maybe some constructive criticism, yeah, I would be welcome. So anyway, I'm saying goodbye for now until next time, and hope this was a good use of your time, and I hope to talk to you again in not so distant future. Happy knitting. One addition, I know I promised in the beginning that I will tell you the story behind the name of this podcast, Surprisingly Even, and I've proceeded to forgetting about it, so did not cover it as promised. So here I am with that additional bit of information. So as I mentioned before, nobody in my family knits, but that's not entirely accurate. My daughter tried knitting since, you know, she's been exposed to it since young age, and she's watching knitting podcasts with me and watching me knit all the time, and she's actually the customer for most of my knitting objects. So she's been exposed to it, and she was bound to try it. So she tried her hand in it, and she did produce a scarf. And when I looked at the scarf, I said, "Your stitches are surprisingly even." And she did not appreciate that comment, and I wouldn't hear the end of it. So when I told her that I have this idea of recording a knitting podcast and I don't know what to call it, and I don't necessarily want to use the word knitting and the title of the podcast, she said, "Why don't you call it Surprisingly Even?" And I said, "This is a brilliant idea." So here we are, Surprisingly Even. So now I think I've covered everything I promised. Again, saying goodbye to you until the next time we speak. Happy knitting, Surprisingly Even